Now that we have finished working on the template for the progress page, it's a time to split this markup by components, so we can simply move markup of individual item into its own component. So we're gonna create new component inside the components folder with a name progress item. But before that, let's just cut this markup of individual list item. On this place, use our new component progress item. And now we're gonna create a new file within components folder with a name progress item. In here, let's create an empty tag template and paste our markup. We're also going to need to write some logic in here. So let's just add tag script with a keyword setup. And in order to use this component in the progress component, we of course have to write an import statement, an import progress item component from the components folder, like so. And also let's not forget to assign keyword setup to this script. So inside the template, in order to show several progress item components, we're going to apply before directive and iterate this component several times. For example, let's have an array here, which consists of 4 elements. This way we're gonna have 4 such components on the page. And as a value for the key attribute, we're gonna use an index, as well as we're going to add a prop to this component with the same name index, like so. And before doing anything else, let's switch over to the browser and make sure that all these 4 progress item components appeared in the tree. As we can see, they're all in here, so let's switch back to the editor. And now we're going to make these components look different. And the way we're gonna do so is as follows. Firstly, let's go to progress item component. Here I'm going to declare 3 constants called color, progress, and time progress. And let's just list all those values we were using before in the template and put them in these arrays. So for example, we're using 4 different colors, and let's put all these colors in this array: red, yellow, blue, and green. For progress values, we're using number 10, 50, 70, and 100. And then I'm also going to add all available values for timeline progress array. Let's quickly list all these values in this array. And since we're passing one prop to this component called index, we have to declare this prop by using macro define props and specifying proper name for this prop. So as we can see, we have already passed this prop from outside, and now all we have to do and use it as an index for these arrays. And based on this value, let's extract proper values from each of these arrays and assign 2 corresponding constants, like this. And now let's switch to the template section and make some of these values dynamic. For example, activity name we can make dynamic by using the following expression. We're basically going to output different indexes. And then for the color class, let's interpolate constant color, like this. And as for the width, we're going to interpolate another constant called progress. And the same constant should be also used in here to print out numeric value of the percentage. And lastly, we also have to use time progress instead of hard coding this string. And what we're gonna do next is actually go back to the progress component, and let's remove all markup from here and leave only usage of progress item component. So now we need to find a way to iterate over activities array. So we can access this array by basically importing it from our global module activities. Let's write down import for this array right here. And now let's just use this array to iterate over it in this before directive. On every iteration, we're going to receive individual activity objects inside this variable activity. And also, we will use here an index of this item. So as for the value for the key attribute, we can use identifier of the activity, like this. And then we're going to pass an extra property to this component called activity and pass the whole activity object. And now we can go back to progress item component, declaring here one more prop called activity, and let's use this activity object in order to output the name of this activity right here by referencing property name. And now, as many activities we currently have in our application, as many list items we're gonna have on the timeline page. Currently we have only 3 activities, and which is why we're seeing 3 list items on this page. But in fact, if we switch over to the activities page, we will see that we have assigned the time only for 2 activities, for reading and training, and the coding activity doesn't have any time. So what we have to do instead is actually show only those activities on the progress page which were assigned the time. In other words, we're not supposed to see coding activity in this list. So let's see how we can implement this. Currently we don't have a function to filter out only those activities that were assigned the time. So now we have to create one more function inside activities module that is basically going to do this filtering. So what I'm going to do in here is actually export new constant called tracked activities. And as a value for this constant, we're going to use computed property. Later it will become clear why I have actually chosen to use computed property in here. And for now, let's just figure out what condition we're going to use in this filtering function to filter out only those activities that have time assigned. So if we take a look at the activity objects, we will notice that every activity object has a seconds to complete property, and for those activities that were assigned the time, this property is not 0. So we can use value of this property inside the condition. So here's how we're gonna do this. Let's apply filtering to the reactive activities array. In here, right away we're going to destructure one property of every activity object called seconds to complete, and we'll use this value as the condition inside this closure. So since we are returning the value directly, eventually we're going to receive a new array which consists only of those activities where this seconds to complete property is not equal to 0. We can also write all this as a single expression within this closure. We don't need these curly braces. Let's get rid of them. And actually the reason why I have chosen to use in here computed property is because we have to recalculate this tracked activities array anytime activities array will be changing. Because while our application is running, users can actually assign on-remote time from particular activities. So we need to watch this array for changes, and the computed property allows us to do it. And every time it notices that activities array was changed, it is going to run this closure again to recalculate our tracked activities array. So now what we have to do is inside the progress component, instead of iterating over activities array, we're going to use our new computed property tracked activities to iterate over only those activities that actually have the time assigned. And just because in our application we currently have 2 activities that were assigned the time, on the progress page we are seeing only 2 list items. That's exactly what we want. And for example, if I'm gonna reset the time for activity reading, then on the progress page we're left only with 1 list item. And if we'll decide to assign time for every activity, the progress page will also reflect this and display 3 list items. And even if we're going to create new activity, let's say sleeping, without setting up time for this activity, on the progress page we're not gonna see this activity, but right after we're going to assign the time, the progress page will also display our new activity sleeping. So far so good. Let's continue working on this page in the next lesson.